We are now in the magic room, and from Tramp we move southward, and with the help of Google Earth we can bring the Pyrenees here. Moving southward, we cross the Montsec Range and we enter the Ager Syncline, which is just south of the thrust. The Ager Syncline, that developed in the footwall of an ancestral expression of the Montsec thrust, has been filled with deltaic sediments, Paleogene in age, and essentially these sediments pertain to the Tramp-Ager group and the Figols group. These sediments were deformed in this syncline, and to understand the syncline, I think we have to take a look at this sketch. The syncline is an asymmetric feature with a very thin northern limb and a dramatic expansion of the succession to the south. If you want to understand this, you have to take into account the major angular unconformity you have in here, at this point, which is exactly this one, where the sandstone of the Figols group overlied unconformably the Tramp-Ager underneath. This angular unconformity is related to the fact that the Tramp-Ager group was tilted to the south during a phase of deformation, and on top of this tilted surface you have a progressive onlap of the Figols strata in such a way that the northern limb of the syncline, which was this one, is considerably thinner than the southern one. Here is the thrust of the Montsec, through which Jurassic carbonate dolomites overlie the tertiary succession of the Ager Basin. This is the Amettla anticline, and the relief of this anticline was already present at the time of the Figols deposition. And this anticline is a sort of southern boundary of the basin. Here is the axis of the Ager syncline, northern limb very thin, southern limb very thick. And in the southern limb we can recognize the Tramp-Ager group, a marine flooding surface at the top, some shale above, and then in yellow we have the unconformity through which the Figols 1 overlies the Tramp-Ager group. Here you have the deltaic sandstone we will see in detail later on. Here you have a marine flooding surface. You have a more shady succession up on top, another sequence boundary, sands in here, Figols 2, marine flooding surface, high stand mud, sequence boundary, and Figols 3, which is in here. In the northern limb of the syncline, the only Figol, the first Figol that appears, is the Figols 2. So the sediments you see here onlapping onto the Tramp-Ager group, right here, through an angular unconformity up to 30 degrees, are the same that you have in here. Here we take a look at the Figols 1. This is the marine flooding surface on top of the Tramp-Ager group. This is the sequence boundary. These are sediments we will be looking in detail at Les Alteres. Essentially these are tidal bars, marine flooding surface, sequence boundary, Figols 2. And in here you have a very, very interesting unit in the Figols 1 that we have interpreted many years ago, and I think the interpretation is correct, as a tsunami bed. And this is a key bed of local significance, but that can be mapped very carefully, very precisely in a large portion of the Ager Basin. The composition of this tsunami bed is very peculiar, very strange, because the Figols sediments are essentially tidal, subtidal, highly bioturbated, very poorly fossiliferous. In here you have a bed with a very sharp base, consisting almost entirely of open shelf forams, macroforams. Most of these are nummulitis. And you have also echinoids somewhere scattered through the bed. And these are open shelf sediment that were brought in by a tsunami. And I believe that these tsunamis are probably related to the onset of some megaturbidites in the basin more eastward. Anyway, this bed is very interesting and is very useful for local detailed correlation. The key bed is the one which is in black here. So these carbonates here would be this one, shale above, sequence boundary in red here and in yellow here, and the blue here is the black one in here, and this is the key bed. There is another key bed that we call key bed number 2, slightly above, but is not as spectacular as this one. Now we will visit for a while the Ager Basin, looking in detail the tidal feature that characterize particularly the lower part of the Figols succession. Then we will move to the Salteres to look at the tidal bars. And just as an introduction, I show you this cartoon. Here is the Ager Basin at the time of the deposition of the Figols unit, the Monsec Trust. The open ocean was to the west, and in here you had continental strata. You have the Amettla and the Emilian line that are bounding the basin to the south, and you had the strong tidal circulation in this basin. And based on very precise measurement from here up to here, we can say that the width of the Gulf at the time of the Figols 2 was approximately between 8 and 10 kilometers, so it was a narrow basin. And we use for interpretation of many of these facies the Colorado Delta in the Gulf of California as an analog. If you consider the stratigraphy of the Figols, Figols 1, Figols 2, Figols 3, if you consider the Monsec Trust in here, the Emilian line here, and the Amettla line here, this 3D diagram is something like this. So partly strike and partly dip. The strongest tidal action was during the Figols 1, when the Gulf was very narrow. It's also very strong at the time of the Figols 2, and decreases considerably at the time of Figols 3, where you have lots of other type of facies which are not entirely deltaic. You also have some barrier island, small barrier island system up on top here. So this is the 3D view of the basin at the time of the Figols deposition. I would stop.